Shambhavi, Surbhi, so lovely to see all of you here. So the way I was thinking of structuring the discussion was I'll have a few questions which are there for the entire panel, and you could, decide who wants to pick up those questions first. And there might be a few questions that I'll specifically put across to each of the panelists. For the participants, feel free to put your questions on the chat box. I have already received a few questions via Umesh from participants who had already sent this across. So thank you so much for that. But those who haven't can continue putting it in the chat box, and I'll take it at the end of the discussion so that we can hear the panelists first, and then add on to these questions. So my first question to the panel, and this question can be answered only in one line, gentlemen and ladies. So in one line, what has engaging with change meant for each one of you over the past 15 months? Let's start with Surbhi.
Well, for us in our industry, in the last 18 months, professionally and personally, I would sum it up by saying that constant is the change, and we have to adapt to the new normal. I think that's what is going to sum up everything for everybody across industries, across the globe. Okay.
So I noticed you did put it in one line, albeit a long one, Surbhi. But what I gather from there is a lot of flux out there, and therefore adaptability has been key for you. That makes a lot of sense. Shambhavi, what's your one-liner on how you guys been engaging with change over the last few months?
In fact, 2 words for me was personal transformation. I think I learned a lot as a human being. I think the experience was fantastic. I mean, I haven't had a better teacher in the last decade. So personal transformation. From corporate perspective, I think it's a lot which we would cover today, but I'll stop at that.
Sure. I think it's great that you mentioned personal transformation, because so often we tend to forget that part. And honestly, as leaders, any transformation back at the workplace really starts from our own personal transformation. So I'm glad you brought that up. Atul, what's your take on engaging with change?
So for us, it has been apprehension, excitement, and achievement, in that order. So when the whole thing started, a lot of apprehension, how would we go about doing things? And suddenly the whole thing changed from physical to digital, virtual teams, virtual offices. Then excitement started creeping in as we started, aligning people to what the resources are and how will we work. And then achievement. I think we have done fairly well the last 1.5 years.
So I think it's more or less aligned to the Elizabeth Kubler-Ross curve. Starting with shock. Oh my God, what happened here? And then avoidance, and then gradually kind of going up the stress curve and saying, okay, I am accepting this, and then it becomes a part of your life, and you move on from there. So beautifully put. I think what everybody would be interested in knowing is how each of you have either adapted your talent management strategy, right, over the last few months, or how you've seen other organizations adapt their talent management strategies. You could pick up any one piece out of the entire spectrum, and if there are any success stories there or any recommendations, please feel free to share that. Questions open to all of you, so you could decide who wants to go first.
So I'll take that up, if that is okay.
Go ahead, Chan.
Sure. So I think this entire period, as I said, has been learning for us, and the millennials are now getting used to working at their pace, and we have been visionary with that respect as an organization. We're looking at not only hiring talent from the current base locations, but we're looking at moving at a permanent, partial work from home situation, where we can probably attract talent from the tier 2 and the tier 3 cities across India. I'm also anticipating that this is going to work positively for us because of the nature of work, and people would probably be more creative when we get opportunities and talents like that. So
do you see this as something which is going to persist over an extended period, Shambhavi, or do you see this more as a transient measure, let's say over the next few months?
We look at it as a more stable approach to our talent management process. And I think we have a commitment from our entire business leadership team to relook at this model. And we are actually revisiting this whole process right now, and we're probably one of the first ones to experiment with this model to decongest the city and, have, opportunities being created across India.
In fact, I'm glad you mentioned this, Shambhavi, because even about 17 years ago, when I was in the banking sector, before I moved into talent consulting, banks and financial companies had started experimenting with that. And I think Atul will probably second me on that one. Because there was a fair amount of saturation, within the metros, difficulty and the fight for talent in that saturated space. But keen to understand from Surbhi and Atul, is that something that you're seeing in your industries as well? And is that something you see yourself doing?
Yeah, sure. So like you mentioned that, in the financial services space, we had started experimenting earlier, and, the trend continues and rather has got accentuated by the recent developments. Also, to answer your question, holistically, Jagmohan, I think as an organization, we were quite proactive, because it's important that before you get into any kind of a new way of working or a new model, you need to have your basics in place. And I think that's what we had done proactively in terms of, setting the pieces to, putting the pieces together. IT, information technology, being a very critical aspect or a backbone over there, which, ensured that, we were ready for this. And I would like to answer your question in two parts, Jagmohan. One is talent from outside, when you are acquiring new people, whether they are management trainees or lateral hires who are coming into the company, and the talent which is within the organization. Now, for the people who we are getting from outside, whether they're management trainees or lateral hires, the entire process has been digital. One shift, besides going to tier 2 and tier 3 cities, also is that now we're looking at people who could work from anywhere. So not necessarily they have to come into Mumbai or Delhi or any of the bigger places and really work from there. So that's also flexibility that we have gotten. And of course, a complete digital onboarding for these people.
Atul, I want to stop you. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Again, the same question that I put to Shambhavi. So 6 months later or 8 months later, when, let's say, situation hopefully is better, is that still going to continue? Are you still going to allow people to operate from wherever they want, or will there be a shift to that?
So, frankly, nobody can predict the future, Jagmohan. But definitely, we need to have a point of view or a perspective on future. And I think from that point of view, this trend will continue. That's what we're looking at. Because end of the day, when you're looking at talent, right, the talent is not just limited to the large metros or bigger places only. You could get them from anywhere. And there are so many success stories that you hear, of people doing well and, from smaller places or lesser known locations as well. I don't see a problem. I think the digital infrastructure that has come in place now will also help us in terms of, taking the trend forward. That's what I feel.
Atul, I'm going to move on to Surbhi, but I want to come back to you and to Shambhavi with a follow-up question in a while. Surbhi, over to you.
Thanks, Jagmohan. So for us, the real estate sector, we look at digitalization as a possibility for many years, but the classic brick and mortar is not going to get digitalized. So as a result, what's ended up for us is it's become even more difficult to be fair and make those choices in terms of who's going to be working from home. How much are the roles that are going to be acceptable, which can accommodate a work from home, a hybrid, a 2-day, a 5-day. So the labor which comes in to build our houses and to do that absolute laborious task, for us, it's a very big difference challenge, and also at the same time, classically real estate, unlike the IT or the finance sectors, we've never had work from home. So I wouldn't be afraid to admit that in 40 years of the organization's history, it's for the first time we moved to a work from home, and getting the whole organization to move in that direction, having technology aligned, upskilling, reskilling our employees at different levels of the organization was certainly a big task. And yes, we are also open to looking at it. But for us, the hybrid is going to be limited to just a few. It can't go on for the organization at length and breadth.
Sure. Sure. No, that's a fair point, Surbhi. Okay, there is this question sitting on my table, and this question has been asked by at least 4 people. So I'm going to pose this to you right now. And this is for all the panelists. I know we're talking about going beyond metros, beyond tier 1 cities. We are looking at hybrid workplaces and so on. But one of the key challenges that everybody's talking about today is what happens to collaboration, right? When you have people sitting in different locations. So we've seen most of the tech guys working reasonably well, irrespective of where they are. And a lot of functions which don't require too much of interaction, right, are also seem to be doing fine. But what about functions, or what about those instances where there is intense collaboration required? How are we going to manage this with the kind of structures that we are looking at, or the work environments that we're looking at?
So
Okay,
since I have a
please carry on, Shambhavi.
Okay, so since I have a used case here, I'll probably, and again, I don't know whether it's going to be successful. What we've done is we have classified the current talent as per the role, and those which require high broadband network coverage, collaboration, and a bio bubble type of an atmosphere, we are very clear that we wouldn't be letting that piece fall off because it's business critical. Sure. So it is very important to have your talent strategy in place before going ahead with a visionary plan like this. So we had to actually classify the entire organization within the roles, looking at what is critical, what can be functional, and what is required to be present at office versus what can work with a work from home or a partial work from home. So I think that
lead on this, Shambhavi, human resources, or are the business groups also actively involved?
Absolutely, it's in consensus with the business groups itself. Human resources can never take such decisions as a silo.
Yeah, no, I would have thought so.
Yeah.
Atul, how would this work in an organization with, say, 10,000 people?
Yeah, so, again, Jagmohan, the digital world is not a world of or, it's a world of and therefore both will coexist. You'll have physical, presence. You will also have digital presence or virtual presence. So, for example, in our case, there are a lot of roles, just like what Shambhavi mentioned, a lot of roles which are purely system-based, right? Which have a fairly linear, process of working. Those are roles that we have actually made, work from home, or even let's say from a learning and development perspective, the content teams which are there, right, is basically work from home, and they are connecting with people, through MS Teams or Zoom or through the digital medium. But yes, the more important roles, people in the hierarchy, senior level, they obviously are, expected to come to office and work over there because there is a certain amount of interaction that is required. And for others, it could be on a rostering basis. So essentially, it has to be a well thought through strategy. It is not a fad that we are saying that, we'll just get into it. And it's not also, 1 and 0. So it's a world of and. It's going to be phygital, right? It's going to be a physical presence and digital presence.
Sure. So I'm guessing from the participants' perspective, they might also want to be, looking at answers in terms of how would one go ahead and implement something like this, especially at scale. So I can understand when one is doing this within functions, within smaller businesses. But when you're trying to do this at scale um, in an enterprise environment, and especially Atul, in the kind of environment where you're working, where there are group enterprises out there, is there a method to make this, for want of a better word, easier on business and HR both, to be kind of able to identify resources for this?
Yeah, so there's always a method in the madness, as we say. However, of course, it's something which is evolving really, Jagmohan. To say that anybody would have perfected and found the right answer would not be correct. Whatever that we are doing, small experiments and whatever that we're trying to figure out right now, a lot of it has been successful or has really paid off well in the last 1.5 years. But then it is not something which I would say that it's cast in stone that this is how it will be. But to answer your question more specifically, a lot of effort has gone in from the entire organization, not just HR. HR, of course, was a key anchor in the whole process. But the entire organization got together in terms of understanding, how will we take it forward. So, for example, what I mentioned, that certain roles which need to come to office, certain people which are on rostering basis, certain roles which would be, work from home. And over there also, and in fact, there was a long time where most of the people in complete strict lockdown, or when, the COVID was at its peak, both in the first wave and second wave, when everybody was working from home, how do you, besides, I said, information technology, what else do you do to really, make people comfortable? So, for example, few things that I can talk about over here. Of course, it's a long list, and I cannot really complete the whole piece. But for example, making people more comfortable with the digital medium. So, for example, if it's Zoom and MS Teams, it's not just that I log in and I talk to you or have a meeting. There are a lot of functionalities that I can use, which would come in handy for the kind of work that I'm doing. So we had those general awareness, sessions. There's a lot on the mindset part, where you need to really shift your mindset, and therefore a lot of leadership, messages, communication that went down. A lot of programs that we rolled out for our people were targeting this piece. Then also, if you look at it, a very, very important part, Jagmohan, is the work-life balance. Work-life balance for some had gone for a complete toss, because you were starting off early in the morning and finishing off late in the evening, and no weekends, nothing at all. That again had to be taken care of. Otherwise, it can really have a serious burnout on the employees. So from an employee wellness perspective, from overall wellness perspective, also a lot of things that we worked on and went there. So again, I'll say that yes, these are all experiments that are being done by different organizations at this point of time. Some of them will continue. Some of them may need to be modified or changed as we go through the experience. Frankly, it's 1.5 years. But yes, a lot of things that we've done so far have really helped us in terms of moving ahead as an organization.
Yeah.
And I'd like to add one thing. It's something which we've seen work very well in our organization. Historically, we used to have a whole structure around in-person meetings in which the whole country, people from across locations would gather every quarter and have an in-person conversation, which leads to a different level of bonding and rapport. And then as a result, it, cascades into better collaboration at the workplace. So when we were hit with this entire lockdown in the first and the second waves, we made sure our meeting rhythms, what used to happen quarterly in person, moved to an interactive virtual session. Learnings moved, and for teams which were finding difficult and scrambling with the fact that how do they get work done, how they interact with each other, we had to actually, as HR, step in, facilitate the entire meeting rhythm process for them, have new rules for the roles for all of these teams which were lacking the structure. Earlier it was easy, I could just hop out of my cabin and walk over to somebody else's desk, but now it's just, I have to make sure that I send a calendar invite, and I have all the training and functionalities. Also, on what Atul spoke about, fostering well-being. I think one more facet which was important for us was to look at fostering a sense of belonging. A lot of people, for a period of time, got very, very impersonal. They kind of away from the fact that they were very, very tightly bonded teams, and specifically individuals who were very, very accustomed to having in-person conversations, even for the performance reviews. A lot of people took time to really come on board with the fact that these are things which can get done through a visual medium, a technology-enabled medium. So I think as managers, we also have to foster that sense of belonging in the virtual world also for our employees.
I love the fact that you spoke about the sense of belongingness, because I think at times when change management is happening, while it's more to do with the software aspects, we actually during implementation tend to focus more on the hard aspects. But the people aspects are so important. And Atul also rightfully said it's the mindset. And I'm guessing mindset changes had a lot to play in getting this through in all these three cases that we spoke about. Okay, let's move now a little to leadership and again connected to talent management. These are the smaller ones. Each of you, if you were to pick up 2 leadership capabilities that are greatly relevant today and would be at least for the next 3 years, what would those 2 leadership capabilities be for each of you? The only rule here is you can't repeat what the other people are saying. So we want to make this a little tough on you. Surbhi, let's start with you this time.
Sure. So for me, I think one key thing is lead by doing. We've had this classic idea that leaders will lead, managers will review, and doers will do. So I think that whole thought process has diminished. We as leaders also need to get into the action side, the execution. It's not that we sit on our high chairs. So collaboration at the grassroots level is very, very imperative. We need to step in and really lead by example and play a first-hand role in shaping the organization, as well as what sets the tone for our team members who then become the first face of the organization in a client-facing role. Second thing is we need to create a balance in the kind of people we are bringing on board and what we hold as the entire matrix of the organization. So we'll need all kinds of people, a diverse workforce, all the way from the innovators to the disruptors, the steadfast, the ones who are just going to box in, box out. I think as HR, we really need to get that balance in the organization. So these are my 2.
Okay. Shambhavi, what about you?
So to go a 360, I think I would go back to empathy and mindfulness. I think extremely important. We are trying to reach out to people and be a little sensitive about the overall well-being currently, because a lot of employees have themselves gone through a trauma. And going back, I think it's good to have the leadership commit again, and all our town halls, we are seeing the leaders talk about well-being and being, able to reach out to employees. All of us went through tough times, so it has not been easy on the organization and the employees. So we just, I would re-emphasize on mindfulness as a very important, trait right now from leadership perspective. And of course, empathy.
Are there any initiatives which the organization is taking to facilitate mindfulness, or?
Lot of them we're putting in place. I cannot talk on the ones which are in pipeline, but
Sure.
Definitely we've extended a lot of benefits which were initially not there to enable employees, get through the trauma. So, employee assistance plans and, things like, taking a break in between, physical and mental well-being. There are number of things we are doing and rolling out. But yes, I mean, this has been emphasized before every meeting as well, so that, it's not just there as an HR initiative, it's driven by the leaders.
And I'm hoping and guessing that some of these initiatives, if not all, will continue to sustain themselves even when things are a little more different than they are.
Absolutely. So I see the business leaders balancing both the wings, being empathetic as well as being able to close on numbers, because otherwise, we don't want to, twist the swing and lose out on the results at the end of the year. So I think it's a beautiful combination which they are displaying right now. And yes, it's going to be a long-term lookout, at least what we can anticipate now.
Thanks, Shambhavi. Atul, what are your two?
Jagmohan, I think there was some connectivity issue. I hope I'm back in the call here.
No, you are now.
Okay, yeah, because I think some connectivity issue here at my end. Okay, I hope it's my turn now.
You are.
Okay. Okay.
I think we seem to have lost you again, Atul.
The other panelists, like mindfulness, which Shambhavi spoke about. But from a leadership, two things, besides whatever that has been mentioned by my co-panelists. One is in terms of, I would say, strategic thinking, which has been a all-weather capability or competence and is still very, very pertinent in the new normal, and as things are changing, because we need to be a lot more strategic. There are a lot of complex problems to be solved now, and the earlier ways of doing it may not really work out. And linked to that, I would say what we refer to as learnability, but open to new things, new ideas.
Atul, are you there? Atul, are you there?
Issue was.
Hello?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yeah, Atul, we kind of lost you in between. You were talking about learnability.
Yeah, learnability. So I'm saying that, people need to be open to new things. Still I find in a lot of organizations and a lot of places people I interact with, they still have the old mindset that this is how things need to be done, right? So I think the openness to pick up new things and, carry on with that, just like what you asked earlier, a short while back, that, what's the probability of these things carrying on 6 months down the line or 1 year down the line? So I think from that perspective, appreciating the new things, the changed environment, and, picking up opportunities and moving on that. So two things.
So Atul, which brings me to the next logical question, which is, if I were to look at the 6 things that, have been brought up between the three of you, some of these things, and there are a lot of other capabilities beyond these 6 as well. A lot of this will require a mindset change, and some of it might also require leadership skilling. How are organizations, in your opinion, going about doing that? So are they adopting the traditional learning programs, learning interventions, or are they looking at some other ways of developing some of these core leadership capabilities? Again, open to the panel.
Okay, let me go first this time. So one, of course, as you mentioned, a lot of focus in terms of various learning interventions for different levels of leaders in the organization. Because when you say mindset change, it is not just the mindset change at the top level. It has to cascade down to the last span in the value chain. And therefore, from a segmented learning perspective, different things which we are, working on, again, through a blended learning format, which is instructor-led and, self-learning mode, right? And certain courses that we are nominating people to. That is one. The other piece is that something which is very, very critical is that the leader connect with the people, and which is reiterating that how are
Atul? Yeah, I think he's back.
I'm really sorry. In Mumbai today, I think this has changed my from Wi-Fi to mobile. Am I audible now?
Yes, you are. So I heard till the point you said reiterating some,
Yeah.
and then I lost.
So I'm saying that, the leadership speak, as we say, in terms of aligning people, in terms of what the opportunities are. I think that's also very, very critical, where we have our senior folks and also different people at middle level who are actually, being encouraged to speak about the opportunities that are coming up now, and also bring about that mindset shift in people. Because when people, listen to their supervisors or their leaders with conviction, that what the opportunities are, it also helps a lot in terms of, making that.
Okay, that's helpful, Atul. Surbhi, Shambhavi, any out-of-the-box thing that you're either doing or you're seeing other organizations doing to upskill leadership capabilities?
So, Jagmohan, I am revisiting my HR blueprint clearly, because what worked in the last few years is not going to work now. Clearly, I mean, and the thought process here is I'm focusing on bit-sized learning, because there is so much of information available now after the pandemic, right? So I frankly don't have an answer of any, revolutionary change. I'm definitely looking at breaking learning into chunks, okay, and then giving it, because there's so much happening with an employee on a daily basis, just like Atul mentioned, top down and bottoms up, but it's going to be fragmented, it's going to be slow. I don't want to overload information where it just, passes down. So that's going to be my style.
And Shambhavi, when you talk about bite-sized learning or nano learning, only self-paced learning, or are these also live interactive sessions, but in miniature packages?
It's going to be blended. There's no way. Yeah. So again, with Atul on that, it's going to be blended with both.
Okay. Okay. Surbhi, anything new from your side on this one?
Like both Shambhavi and Atul said, for us also we're reevaluating what was an essential skill many years ago is going to be a different requisite in today. Going back and looking what's my skill matrix and accordingly having a tailored approach. We're also looking at, since we've seen so much of change at different levels of the organization, we've also looked at creating more pipeline within the organization for different roles. So if I am at a mid-management role, I am also encouraging people to start developing coaching and mentoring habit, which is going to be internal to the organization. And yes, an individual who's internal to the organization is the best teacher. I'm not trying to negate the skill of an external trainer, but at the same time, what's very, very specific to the DNA of the organization will be best taught to the individual on the job by one of the seniors. So two things, internal skilling as well as creating a culture of coaching and mentoring as a standard part of the DNA of the organization. That's what we're looking at.
Yeah, and I think I would tend to kind of agree with that, and also with a fair amount of what Shambhavi and Atul mentioned, because what I'm observing along with my colleagues also is that for certain stuff, especially when it comes to mentoring, organizations are looking at developing those capabilities in-house. Though even to develop those capabilities in-house, they might initially start out with external consultants who come and set up the mentoring framework and kind of weaponize in a positive way the internal mentors so that they can then, facilitate that process internally. For very specific items where particular expertise exists externally and where it may be too difficult or time consuming to develop it internally, or where the scale is so huge that you cannot do it internally, organizations are then looking at external consultants and saying, okay, here is stuff that you could do. And even there, I'm noticing that there is way more diversity now. So earlier, organizations, for instance, who were working with only one or two partners primarily, are now looking at, going kind of broader with the selection, because there's so many new things which have come up, and so that's the other thing that I'm noticing. Coaching, I still see externally happening more, while mentoring is more internal driven. And blended learning, of course, is something which is continuing. I see a lot more of self-paced happening these days, but self-paced is again not for very specialized skills. It's more for generic, and that too more at associate and mid-management level. At senior levels, leadership levels, people are still looking at blended, with a fair deal of live interactions thrown in.
Yeah, so self-paced, if I could just add, is also to support what is coming in through, let's say, experts to the employees. So from that point of view also, when we are looking at our self-paced learning strategy, whether it is mobile-based or e-learning, right, we are actually linking it also as a support or from a sustenance point of view, that whatever that people have gone through, there's some kind of a brush again with the basic concepts there.
One of the things that I've also noticed, which is coming in from our international clients, Atul, Shambhavi and Surbhi, and for the participants, in case this makes sense, I've noticed a lot of our external clients going in for LXPs, learning experience platforms. Now, some of them already have, some of them don't. The ones who don't, we are helping them integrate our LXP with their LMSs, or there are other LXPs which internationally are doing really well. The idea is that learning doesn't stop. So today there might be 3 or 4 specific areas where you want your leadership and your other employees to focus on. Tomorrow, the paradigms might be different, but the whole process of learning is not going to stop. And the LXP really allows you, therefore, to keep having people self-assess where they are on different capabilities, what needs to be developed further, and gives them the leeway to strengthen that on an ongoing basis. So apart from what the organization is doing, you also have a lot of these self-assessed, self-developmental stuff, which is happening on the side. And I think that adds a lot more power to the resource base. I thought I'd just kind of share that. Okay. One talent management myth that you've seen exposed in recent times. We have about 5 more minutes for the discussion and then about 10 minutes for questions. So this is my second last question to the panel. Then I'll take up audience questions. One TM myth that you've seen exposed in recent times.
Face-to-face interviews, of course.
Okay, I love that one. Yeah, that should have happened so many years ago.
I know.
But yeah, I guess it.
But we do get googlies in that as well. Okay, so you need to. I mean, it's always convincing to meet the person in person. So of course.
No, I understand that. I'm very old school in that way. I mean, I still love to do meetings face to face. But then I guess you roll with it and you make the best of it. But I'm so glad you mentioned that, Shambhavi. Atul, you were saying something.
Yeah, I'm saying that adding to that, even learning and development can also happen in a digital format. And it's not just product process trainings, it's also behavioral interventions that can be done effectively through the digital medium. And I'm talking about instructor-led.
I agree more with Atul on that. In fact, from in-person trainings last year in my organization, we moved to 100% digital, be it campus hiring, which is bulk hires, for sales and for technical roles from engineering. Everything moved online. So I think the whole myth of doing things in person got debunked for many facets of the role that we manage in day-to-day.
I was just smiling to myself when I was listening to Atul and you. So I have these 2 international clients of mine, and they wanted their executive leadership interventions to be done. There were very specific interventions we were doing for them. One was around agility, and the other was around leadership adaptability. And it's been exactly 15 months since those are on the back burner, and we've been trying to, convince them that, look, it's not going to be too different. But I think that myth still persists there. The good thing is they're still waiting for 15 months, but the irony is that the intervention is around agility and adaptability. So, but yeah, some myths will continue persisting. Okay. Atul, you spent a long time around L&D, and I thought you could probably help with this. How are organizations building momentum around their L&D initiatives at the moment? And Surbhi and Shambhavi, if you want to add, please feel free to do that.
So, the last 1.5 years have actually been good in terms of accelerating our digital drive, because everything went virtual, and therefore, we kind of got what we have been experimenting with for the last 6-7 years. Actually, got a big boost here. But along with that, so whereas the reach has improved, and therefore we are continuously looking at, what are the newer technologies that can be brought in, like you were talking about LXP, from a learner perspective. For example, we did something called, we have a learning and development week, which we celebrate in our organization, which is a week-long affair. Last year, it was completely, 6 days. It was a, virtual reality platform that we had taken, and it was beautifully made with the conference rooms and stalls and everything what you would expect in a normal physical world. And would you believe it? We had 5,000 unique users accessing it, participating in it for full 1 week. So that was something which was really really nice. So I'm saying that one is new learning technologies which we can bring in. The other important aspect that we're focusing on is leader-led trainings, which is very critical, because if the senior people in the organization also start coming forward, and in this time when a lot of people were actually working from home and they had some time, a lot of people actually volunteered to come up and partner with us in terms of some learning interventions, which is really good. So this is not just business related. Even if you look at let's say behavioral programs that we are conducting, and a senior person comes in and co-facilitates or facilitates along with you, the impact is far more than just a trainer coming and doing that particular program.
And the gain is both ways, because the leader also is taking away a whole lot, A, from a sensing perspective, B, engagement, and C, their own thought leadership getting going out there.
Absolutely. And then the third part is that what's been mentioned by my co-panelist, by what Shambhavi also mentioned earlier, bite-sized learning. So we have a lot of these mobile-based learning pieces that we have brought in, which are really handy on the go. People can go through it. You're driving, sitting in the car, and you can actually go through your mobile and look at those bite-sized pieces. So these are certain things which have really helped us and actually got us a good traction in the organization.
Okay. I think time to take some questions from the audience. So there's a question from Kashish Nair. Kashish, thank you for your patience. I know you put it up on the chat a while ago. So Kashish says, good afternoon, and good afternoon to you too, Kashish. In 2019, there was a slowdown in the automobile sector due to BS6 norms, and management is not interested in giving increments. Oh my God, that's a sordid affair. But again, something which, Kashish, is happening across so many organizations, very large organizations, and of course with startups, even more so. But Kashish's question is cogent. How can we encourage and retain talent in this situation?
So, what we have done, for example, and see, this is a very pertinent point of people or companies may not being able to give, increment during the slowdown, which happens, but it's obviously a temporary affair. It's not permanent. However, what can the companies do? So, for example, let's talk about the COVID situation, because that's more relevant. As an organization, as I mentioned, that we started doing a lot of things on the wellness front for our employees, though digitally. right? We also went ahead and, for some people, because we come in the emergency services, financial subsequently, we also got into tie-ups for vaccinating our employees. So what's important is that if the employee can understand that I'm working for an organization which is a caring ingredient, because that takes care of all our needs. But the fact is that if I know that I'm working for a company which is caring for me, even in a slowdown, they are actually spending time, money, energy in terms of taking care of the employees through various means. I think that means a lot. In my own interactions with a lot of people across the country in my organization, whenever I spoke to them and had these kind of interactions, most of them were very grateful that yes, it's really good to be with such an organization. Of course, most of the companies had to go through a dry year last year in terms of increments and bonuses because that's how the situation was. But then that's a temporary affair.
I think I like the fact that you suggested that apart from financial increments, there could be other non-monetary based ways of the organization showing appreciation and caring for their employees, number one. And two, the fact that the employee should know that this is a transient situation, not permanent, and they should have enough faith in the organization and the leadership that when things change for the better, they'll change for them as well.
Absolutely.
Great. Shambhavi, Surbhi, any comments on this one?
Yes, I'd like to add to this, Jagmohan. So what also happens is, yes, it's a phase of transition, but the key to get through this transition and to give that comfort and confidence to the employees while we're trying to do everything in the interest of these employees, the nuanced leadership communication is very important. I think as leaders, we have to have that connect and keep reiterating, and most importantly, a consistent message across organization and at all different platforms. There is no loss in translation, and every leader is consistently giving out the same message, and we are also consistent our actions with respect to what we're speaking. So it's we are actually practicing what we are preaching, and it's consistent behavior that we are demonstrating across and all throughout these changing times.
Yeah, I kind of echo that, Surbhi, and I'm going to add my 2 pennies to that. Also based on some of the interactions I've had in the past with global leaders while writing some of my books. I think one of the lessons that I picked up personally was, if times are tough, then times are tough for everybody. Times cannot just be tough for your employees. So the leader cannot be, having a different experience when the employees are having a very different one. So if my employees are not getting an increment, I have no business getting an increment either. And if my compensation in any case is 4 times higher than the average, then maybe this is a great time for me to demonstrate some leadership, and say, okay, I am willing to compromise on some of my compensation here during this transient time, so that can be better used elsewhere. It may not do anything else, but it just passes on the message very clearly that yes, it is transient. And that's where the leadership is coming to. And the leadership is really putting their, money where the mouth is. The other thing that I've noticed has worked beautifully is honesty. Look, if you don't have the money, you don't have the money. You can't just conjure money. There is no magic wand. And there is nothing embarrassing or wrong to say that, look, the organization is out of funds. We don't have the funds to provide increments. I can provide increments, but then that will be at the cost of the growth of the company. And as an organization, if we're looking at growth, we will need to absorb some of that pain in the short term. And I think as long as the leadership is convinced about that, they'll be convincing to their employees as well. Provided, of course, that they do intend to honor their promise of making good on increments when the situation is good. So actually it goes back to very simple things: honesty, transparency, being candid, and mirroring things that you would probably want for yourself, for your employees as well. Okay, there is a question from one of the participants, which is, how do you keep your high pots or fast trackers adequately engaged when the markets are not in a situation which support their growth within the industry or especially within your organization. So how do you keep your hypots engaged in today's time?
Okay, so I'll take this one.
Yes, Shambhavi.
Quickly. The advantage we have is, since the numbers are relatively manageable, we're looking at creating internal career growth opportunities and fast tracking some of these guys. So, the business leaders have come up with this initiatives, luckily, and it's working pretty well for creating the fast tracking program. Of course, with my previous experience, I think it is very, very, very important that you're able to differentiate the hypos in first place and not use the peanut butter approach whenever you have a little, surplus to distribute. So I think that sort of, just like Surbhi emphasized, it gives a very consistent message with respect to what we want to do, right? Because there will be people who have also run, but it's also important that you are able to differentiate. I'll stop at that.
I think you've put it very cogently. Thank you so much, Shambhavi. And I'll just add leadership conversations along with that. I think that really is the core. But great point you made there. Surbhi,
can I just add over here?
Yes, please, Atul.
Okay, so one of the interesting things that we have experimented with is in terms of providing stretch roles, right? So for example, one of our HR heads in one of the companies has also been handed over the role of the operations head, right? Now, what really happens is that, one is a vertical growth that you can get, obviously, which follows. But, even at a lateral level, if you start handling multiple subjects, or when I say multiple subjects, something which is physically possible for that person to do, that also brings in the excitement in the person to really deliver more. And, the case in point, the person is one of our top performers. Similarly, we're looking at other places also wherever either there are synergies or some kind of a connect where we can actually have blended roles. So, have a larger portfolio for the person to handle than what they were doing earlier.
I think that's a beautiful way of managing that, Atul. Glad that you shared that. Surbhi, this last one goes to you. We have exactly 1 minute left to close the session. As business continues to work in the new normal, are we not missing out on the employee connect? Any thoughts on that? This question came from the wish.
I think we are losing on the employee connect, specifically where organizations predominantly where there was a very heavy role of an in-office working environment. Specifically, if I look at my own sector, very, very new to this entire work from home culture. So keeping the DNA, keeping the culture alive, and that in-person employee connect was definitely a big game changer for us. We struggled, battled with it. We also had to develop strategies around how do we build it back in the new virtual environment. So going back to HR team members, making sure we have regular, constant connection with different employees. So it would not be essentially that I have an HR rep in a particular location. They are the only ones who can speak. So from leaders to mid-management, the HR reps, cross-functional teams to be conversing, different environments to be created, employee engagement activities to be driven post-office hours or fun Fridays in the virtual environment. Everything was done to make sure that we bring back that employee connect. It was a heavy ask for my sector, my organization. And yes, it's difficult, but surely doable.
Thank you, Surbhi. Any one-liners that Shambhavi or Atul you have on this question? How do you maintain the emotional connect? Anything that you want to add to supplement what Surbhi said?
See, we are, okay, Atul, sorry.
No, please carry on, Shambhavi.
We are social beings, and personally, I also miss the office environment. So coming back, I think we're refocusing on the wellness part of it, big time. And we hope we are able to, establish a bridge in between.
Okay. Yeah. So I'll just add that, yes, the the thing of coming to office and meeting people over there is not there. But the connect otherwise, we have really we've gone a little overboard on that. So, for example, a lot of leaders are actually encouraged that on certain special occasions, let's say, there's a lunch which is sponsored and sent to the employees in that span, with a message from the leader. There are a lot of sessions that are happening. As I said, Leadership Connect is very, very critical in our kind of a case. So, we are actually looking at different innovative ways of letting the employees know that, look, we care for you. We are there with you, and all of us are in it together.
I think between the three of you, you've literally nailed it. Devesh, I'm going to add a slightly philosophical angle to this, if I may. When I think of employee connect, I don't think it's too different from any kind of connect between two human beings. You can stay with a person all your life. You can work with a person in the same office all your life, and you may still not be connected. And yet there may be somebody out there that you don't live with or you don't work with, and you could be more connected to that person than you are with anyone else. Connect has very little at times to do with the physical proximity. It has more to do with how we psychologically and emotionally feel about people. And therein lies the cue, because if organizations and leaders such as all of you are able to figure out how to build and deepen that emotional and psychological connect, even in the new normal, even if things don't go back to where they were, with everybody going back to work at the same time, I think we will still probably be able to maintain that emotional connection. Thank you so much for all those lovely questions and for your time, the audience. And thank you, Atul, Shambhavi, Surbhi, for taking our time. I know you got crazy schedules, for being here. Umesh, thank you so much for contextualizing this and for getting all this together. Thank you, Talgro team, HR Association of India, GESIA IT Association for your partnership. I wish all of you a lovely week and a lovely year ahead. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jagmohan. Thank you.
Thank you, panel. I enjoyed it. Bye. Take care.
Yeah, bye. Take care. Really enjoyed being here. Thank you.
We'll be putting up a recording on YouTube as well as on the LinkedIn page of both Talgro as well as HR Association of India. Okay. In case participants have missed any questions, you're welcome to put that up to the panelists out there, and there will be responses to them. Thank you.